The ring hits the flagstones of Elrond's house, and the world shudders. Candles gutter sideways, shadows stretch, and every beating heart on the hill of council skips in terror as time itself stammers. In the next breath, a small brown hand, calloused, dirt under the nails, absurdly ordinary, lifts the golden circle, and everything listening below the surface of Arda goes suddenly, terribly silent. On the far side of the mountains, a Nazgul screams, and the cry hangs in the air, frozen like a crack in glass that refuses to finish breaking. If this kind of dive into alternate Middle-earth pulls you in, tap like, subscribe for more impossible timelines, and tell me in the comments, if you had to stand guard in any realm of Middle-earth tonight, whose borders would you choose to defend? The golden ring rests on Tom Bombadil's palm as if it weighs nothing at all. He turns it this way and that. The Council of Elrond, a ring of tense faces around him. Sunlight catches on the smooth metal, and for a heartbeat, it reflects not the flicker of the brazier or the worried eyes of elves and men, but a cold, lidless gaze that peers back from another age. Gandalf feels it like a nail driven through his thoughts. Elrond's fingers flex on the arm of his great chair. Glorfindel, standing at his shoulder, shifts his weight as if preparing to seize the thing from Bombadil's hand by force. Aragorn's hand drifts to the hilt of his sword, a motion half instinct, half dread. Only Frodo speaks. "Tom," he whispers, "best not play with it." Bombadil looks up at him, the wide blue eyes full of an old kindness, an old mischief. Goldberry's gift and no one's master, bright ring of sorrow. He sings softly, not truly singing, more a lilting under his breath. "Come now, little master, you've carried this trinket far enough." His tone is light, but the air of Imladris is thick, like the air before lightning. "Tom," Gandalf says, and the word cracks. "We asked you to come only to give counsel, not to be burdened." Those eyes sharpen, and for an instant the jolly mask of the Forest Lord slips. Old Tom watches all your burdens from the river and the reed, from hill and barrow. Long have you all sent your sorrows down the Withywindle. His smile returns, but it doesn't reach his eyes. Perhaps it is time old Tom did more than laugh and pass them by. In this turning, this moment that never came to pass in the known story, the first hairline crack appears in the history of Middle-earth. Aragorn leans forward. He means to keep it. "The wise have already spoken," Elrond says, carefully measured. To give the ring to such as he, who cares not for its power, is to risk that in time he mislay it or forget. And Sauron would grow until he found it again. Tom cocks his head, as if listening to someone no one else can hear. Perhaps he is. "Forget?" Tom echoes at last. "I forget nothing, Elf Lord, in my own country." His voice drops, the music gone. "I was here when the first dark fire kindled in the north. I listened when your Master Elbereth first named the stars. I saw Morgoth fall and the world break and bend, and yet old Tom did not go under the sea. I walk where I will. Your Dark Lord cannot move me, nor your rings bind me." He lifts the one ring closer to his eyes. Around him, unease swells. Frodo feels something else, a tug low in his chest, like the thread that connects him to the ring is being pulled taut, about to snap. The sound of rushing water fills his ears. His heart slams. "Tom, give it back," he says, harsher this time. "Please." Bombadil looks at him with real sorrow. "Dear little fellow," he murmurs, "you do not want this sorrow song any longer, and it will not go easily where you must send it. Old Tom can carry it light as a feather." Gandalf's staff strikes the floor. The wood rings. Tom Bombadil, the wizard, says, "You are known to care for none of the affairs of the world. This is not one more treasure lost in your hills. This is the heart of Sauron, and its fate will rule the doom of all." Doom, doom, Tom sighs, half mocking, half weary. Always doom with the gray wanderer. You think in ends and endings. Tom walks in circles. Songs begin and end, but the hills keep echoing. He places the ring upon his forefinger. At the same time, in the black land of Mordor, Sauron turns all his will toward Imladris. His thought is a hammer searching for the anvil. It finds something else. Tom Bombadil vanishes, not into the ring's invisibility, not into Sauron's searching sight. He steps sideways, out of the net. For Frodo, the world jumps. One moment Tom stands before him in yellow boots, the ring on his hand, and the next, he is nowhere, and yet everywhere. Every eye around the council fire goes wide. Glorfindel starts forward, hand outstretched to snatch at empty air. "Where has he gone?" Boromir demands. "Is this some trick?" Aragorn feels his skin crawl, for he hears something no one else hears. The sudden, stunned pause of the land itself. The faint rhythm that is the breathing of the world stutters, and Gandalf, eyes shut tight, sees further. He feels Sauron's reach smash against something wholly other, something deep and unmoved beneath the song of Eru and the weavings of the Valar. A presence rooted in the first waking of trees, outside the dramas of gods and kings. It is not resistance in the way the wise know it. It is indifference so complete it becomes an immovable wall, and as Ring and Bombadil and Dark Lord collide in that instant of contact, something breaks, not in stone or spirit, but in time. Far away, on the plains of Rohan, a rider's spear hangs mid-thrust, a war cry stretched into a soundless shape. In Moria, a drop of water falls from the ragged black ceiling and never reaches the dark lake. In the Shire, Rosy Cotton's laugh hangs in the green dragon's smoky air like a bell held between strokes, her hand half raised toward a tankard that does not yet tip. The world freezes, the wind stops. The clouds in the high airs over Tanikitil pause in their slow white journey. Elrond's house is a bubble of almost motion in a sea of absolute stillness, and inside that bubble only a few still move. Gandalf gasps, hand clutching his staff as if to feel something anchor him. "Do you feel it?" he whispers. Whether to Elrond or to the ages he has lived, he does not know. Ilúvatar preserve us. The only sound is the crackle of the council fire, and even that is slow, each ember reluctant to shift. Samwise Gamgee is on his feet, without remembering standing, drawn forward by terror for his master. "Mr. Frodo!" He chokes. "You all right?" Frodo is shivering as though from sudden cold. The weight in his breast, the absence of the ring, feels like a wound newly made and yet strangely cauterized. The humming tug that had lived in the corner of his mind since Bag End is gone. There is a strange lightness, a dizzying lack. "I don't know," he whispers. "Where did he go?" Tom's voice answers, not in his ears, but in the air itself. Down, down, it echoes, like a song drifting up from deep water, too deep for shadows, too still for wind. The flickering firelight bends strangely, as if listening, then slowly the air in the council circle thickens, like sap on a tree beginning to congeal. The movements of those not anchored by great power become sluggish. Boromir, halfway through rising, seems to strain against a tide no one can see. His face contorts in effort. "Move!" he snarls to his own limbs. "By the steward's blood, move!" His hand inches upward by the length of a nail. Sweat beads on his brow. Across from him, Legolas' eyes narrow, ancient memories stirring. An elf of the great wood remembers long ages, but he has never felt this. The world's song stuck between notes. Time he breathes in cinder in. The river has clogged. Elrond grips the armrests of his chair, and with the will of 3 ages brought to bear, he stands, joints protesting as if the world itself tries to keep him seated. He looks to Gandalf. "What has he done?" he asks, voice low, controlled, but edged with something like fear. Gandalf's answer is not immediate. He is listening, with more than his ears. In the stillness, he can sense threads that were once hidden by the ceaseless motion of seconds. The way the fates of men and elves wind together, the lines of power from Barad-dûr to the lesser rings, the slumbering watch of the Valar across the bent world, all those threads are drawn taut and held, humming with strained tension. One being, he says at last, with one will, has taken within himself the engine of Sauron's making, and Sauron, in his pride, sought in that same moment to close his hand upon it. 2 great forces, pulling at the spindle of time from opposite ends. He turns his gaze inward and outward at once, and for a moment he is again Olorin in the gardens of Lorien, hearing older voices speak of the music at the beginning of days. Tom Bombadil is not of our stories, he whispers. He walks under the song, not in it. The ring is a harmony written by Sauron into the world's music. Now they touch, and neither yields. The song falters. Elrond's knuckles are white, and we, he says, are caught in the silence between beats. The first peak has come, the world itself held hostage by a being who does not understand, or perhaps does not care for, the fragile economies of time and doom. And far to the east, in a tower of black stone, the Dark Lord Sauron finds to his surprise that he too is trapped. He stands at the pinnacle of Barad-dûr, or rather, he leans eternally forward, one iron-shod foot hanging over the last step, his great hand outstretched toward the they that should have been. The eye blazes from the high turret, but its flame has become a painting of fire, a terrible mural etched into the air. Within his own mind, Sauron still thinks. Thought for him is not bound to seconds. His will does not need the ticking of mortal hearts, and he knows, with a cold fury that cracks the shadowy chambers of his inner being, that he has touched something that should not be touched. This Bombadil, this irritation at the edge of his long negligence, a name in the songs of the stupid little races he never heeded. He presses again, his will clawing at the knot where Tom's essence and the ring's nature intersect, and finds no purchase. It is like trying to grasp a color with a fist. His power claws at that root and slips. Sauron is trapped, but he is not entirely powerless. He can still think. He can still scheme. If time has no passage, then nothing can reach Orodruin. No blade can stab his hand, no hobbit can crawl into his chamber, yet neither can his armies march, nor his Nazgul fly. The board is locked. He is patient. He was there when the first lamps fell. He can wait. He will wait until whatever imbalance has seized the world resolves itself. And when time moves again, his gaze will already be fixed, his will already extended, his plans ready to fall like the stroke of a sword. In Imladris, the council does not dissolve, it elongates. Hours and seconds are meaningless. Effort becomes measure. Those of great inherent power, wizards, elf lords, Númenórean kings of high blood, can still move slowly, as if wading through honey that resists every step. The lesser folk are nearly statues, yet their minds still flicker behind their eyes, some in panic, some in bewilderment. Sam stands a pace behind Frodo, hand half forward, fingers trembling with the effort it takes just to lay them on his master's shoulder. By sheer stubborn love, he completes the motion. It feels like pushing through stone, but he does it. Frodo turns his head, inch by weary inch, to look at him. They share a breath. Sam licks dry lips. "I don't like this, Mr. Frodo," he manages. "Feels worse than the old forester does. Worse than that black rider sniffing over the hill, like the whole world's held its breath, waiting to hear who wins, only I don't know what the game is." Frodo's voice is small in the great hall, but steady. "I don't think this is a game, Sam." He feels something else, a faint echo of song, a tune he once heard in a house of water and lilies, Goldberry's laughter in the rain, Tom's footfalls on the threshold. "Tom," he whispers, "can you hear us? What are you doing?" For a long moment, there is no answer. Then, rain, not real rain, memory, the smell of wet earth, the feel of drops on skin, the sound of a deep, contented chuckle. Tom Bombadil is not in Imladris anymore, nor in any one place. He is walking up and down the roots of things. He strides in his own fashion along the edge where the story of the world meets the chaos beneath. Time here is different, or perhaps it is more true. Moments lie side by side like stones in a riverbed, not strung in lines, but heaped and overlapped. Tom's yellow boots wobble on them, but he is sure-footed. He peers down. Here is himself, singing to frogs before any hobbit was ever dreamt of. Here is Sauron, in fair form, smiling in Eragion. Here is Frodo, asleep under the stars in the Barrow Downs, with swords of Westernest gleaming cold nearby. Here is Aragorn, a child, watching his father ride away for the last time. Tom could step into any of these if he wished, but wherever he looks, there is also the ring now, a bright, insistent note that weaves itself through every scene, no longer only where Sauron or Isildur carried it, but humming faintly beneath all. That is wrong. That is not how it was. Tom frowns. "You've stuck yourself in deep little circle," he says, not unkindly. "You would wind the world tighter and tighter round your master till it all snapped. The ring does not answer. It has no mouth. But Tom can feel its purpose, to dominate, to focus power into one unbreakable thread, to make all roads lead only to Sauron. Yet Tom himself cannot be bent. His song is of another music, one the ring cannot quite encompass. So the ring does what it always tries to do. It adapts. It reaches out just as Sauron did, but sideways, not up. It tries to bind not Bombadil's will, but the pattern of existence he walks upon. It catches time. The two intentions knot together. Tom laughs once, short and startled. "Well now," he says, "that's a tangle. Old Tom never meant to trip the clocks. He feels Middle-earth shudder. He feels old friendships and grudges, wars and weddings and quiet seed plantings, all held in a humming pause. He feels Sauron, furious and impotent, scratching at the edges of his domain. Tom has never cared for councils and wars, but he does care for the flowing of rivers, the sprouting of seeds, the waking of dawn. The world must move. He plants his boots on the shifting bed of moments, braces his hands around the ring, not the little circle of gold now halfway up his finger, but the concept of it in the music, and pulls. In Imladris, Gandalf staggers. Elrond grips the side of the council dais. Frodo yelps as a spike of cold lances through his breast, as if something that once lodged there is being yanked further away still. The strain increases. Leaves on the trees outside hang, mid-fall, but the sap within them tries to rise for another day. Deep roots groan. In the depths of the earth, things older than Sauron shift uneasily. The Ents in Fangorn, frozen mid-step, feel somewhere in the deep, slow chambers of their thought that time is being wrenched like a branch. Tom Bombadil finds the knot does not loosen. He could let go. If he lets go, the ring will snap fully into his being or back into Sauron's grasp, and time will lurch forward again into whatever doom it then finds. Perhaps the hobbit would have hurled it into the fire, perhaps not. That is a path Tom did not walk, or he can keep holding. He can keep the world in the edge of an instant, neither Sauron's nor the free people's. Who are you to choose? A voice seems to murmur in the depths. Tom considers this. Standing at the crossroad of all possible winds, I am only myself, he says honestly, and long have I chosen to do nothing. Perhaps that too is a choice. Perhaps it is time to choose a little more. He begins to hum. It is an old song, older than the Shire, older than Gondor, older even than the tongues of elves. It is the sound of wind in leaves that first tasted sun. It is the patience of stone. He weaves a new pattern around the knot. Time will not flow as it did, but it will not stop altogether either. It will fracture. In Imladris, a gust of wind sprints through the frozen valley, making leaves tremble in their halted fall. Aragorn gasps as his limbs suddenly lurch a full pace forward like a rope gone slack, then jerked again. Boromir topples to his knees, the force of his own half-risen stance catching up to him. Sam nearly falls into Frodo, then catches himself. Only the youngest in the room, and those of least power, seem oblivious to the full terror of what has just occurred because they cannot compare it to what should have been. But the wise know the river of time has not returned to its channel. It is now a broken braid. For some parts of the world, moments will race onward almost as before. For others, they will creep. For still others, they will loop and knot, repeating and altering like the dream of a restless sleeper, and hanging above it all sits Tom Bombadil, fingers stuck irretrievably into the heart of the ring, forever holding Sauron's power at bay. To a point, Gandalf straightens, breathing hard, though his ancient spirit has no need of air in truth. We have no more time, he says, and the irony of the words is not lost on him. We have some time. We must spend it well. Elrond's gaze is distant. He is seeing his homely house surrounded by ages in miniature, the garden where days rush past like seconds, flowers blooming and withering in an eye blink, the grove where a single late leaf will never quite fall until the last years of the world, the library in which some scrolls decay while the hands that hold them never age. What of Sauron? He asks. If we move, does he? Gandalf closes his eyes briefly. No, and yes. His form, his fortress, his armies, they are mired. But his mind is not wholly bound. He will adapt. He always has. When he cannot stride across the board, he will reach in other ways. Through the cracks we have made, he looks at Frodo. The ring is not fully in his grasp, nor fully out of it. And Tom Bombadil holds much of it in a place beyond either of us. This is beyond any lore we have. Frodo swallows. So, what do we do now? Across Middle-earth, the broken river of days begins to show its strange courses. In the Shire, the first sign is subtle. Old Hamfast Gamgee, leaning on his spade, looks up and frowns. The sun, which should have been drifting steadily down toward evening, seems to stutter, reversing slightly, then lurching forward again. Shadows lengthen and shorten in a few heartbeats. Now, what's that about? He mutters. No sense to it, no sense at all. Young hobbits playing in the field notice their own laughter echoing strangely, as if someone else in another time is laughing the same laugh alongside them. Somewhere near Bywater, Farmer Cotton sees a flock of birds that never quite decide whether to rise from the field or stay, and so exist in a shimmer between both for long minutes. But the Shire is far and mostly quiet. Its people are slow and stubborn, and the cracks of time ripple gently there. In Rohan, the effect is sharper. A patrol rides along the east fold, manes streaming, spears bright. One rider, Eothain, son of Eogar, shouts a jest to his friend and watches the words hang in visible mist before him, repeated back in his own voice a moment later as if time itself has hiccuped. They spur their horses faster, trying to outrun the strange echo. The land beneath them changes speed in patches. A field of tall grass on the right bows, in a wind that has not yet reached the grass on the left. The youngest rider, barely of age, looks to the sky and sees storm clouds racing across in an instant, then grinding to a crawl, so slow that he can watch a single coil of vapor twist for what feels like hours. It is the work of the shadow, he mutters. His captain shakes his head. Maybe, he says, or maybe the work of those who thought to out-trick the shadow and pulled too hard at the threads. In Minas Tirith, the White City on its stone spur, the changes are strangest of all, for Minas Tirith stands close to many lines of fate. Denethor, steward of Gondor, finds one dawn that the sun has risen and set 3 times while he was in his secret chamber, gazing into the Palantir. His beard has grown, his cup of wine has soured, and yet the candle beside him remains half melted, as if only an hour has passed in that room itself. He staggers into the high hall. Courtiers look at him with confusion. To them, he has been absent only the length of one council's delay. To him, days have slipped in a blink. What sorcery is this, he demands of the empty air. The city answers with its own oddities. In the third circle, bread in an oven burns in an instant, blackening before the baker's shocked eyes, while his child outside the door holds a pose mid-skip for the same drawn-out seconds. In the houses of healing, a wounded soldier's blood flows sluggishly, while the flowers on the windowsill open and close as if watching multiple dawns. The people murmur. Priests of the men of the West whisper that perhaps the end is nearer than they thought, that this is the cracking of the world foretold in old songs. Denethor clenches white hands on the parapet. If time cannot be trusted, then his great advantage, the Palantir, the planning of long wars, falters. He lifts his gaze eastward. Baradur's shadow still stains the horizon, but its darkness feels strangely static. He narrows his eyes. If my enemy is bound in his tower, he murmurs, then he cannot move his armies, but neither can I move mine as I would, if each march be treacherous in its own hour. The board has changed. He does not yet know that there are places hidden in folds of lingering seconds where men might walk almost unaffected. Narrow isthmuses of normal time between the eddies and whirlpools. Gandalf will come to understand this sooner. Back in Imladris, the Council of Elrond breaks at last, not because they have reached agreement, but because the new nature of the world demands different work. Frodo sits on a stone step outside the Hall of Fire, cloak wrapped around him. The stars overhead glide sometimes swiftly and sometimes barely at all. Occasionally, he sees one streak suddenly across the sky 3 times, following and erasing its own path like a stone skipped back and forth across a pond. Sam is beside him, as always. Strider says we still have to go. Frodo says, voice quiet. However strange the road, Sam pulls his cloak tighter. Begging your pardon, Mr. Frodo, but go where? to that mountain still? How do you walk to a place that might be stuck in yesterday while your next step is 5 days from now? Frodo does not know. Gandalf thinks there are ways, he says, rivers of time not too broken, where we can walk mostly straight. He says Tom has not abandoned us, only changed the shape of the path. He closes his eyes briefly. He still feels the absence of the ring like a goshawk circling where once it perched on his heart. He had thought that when it left his keeping, his burden would end. But now, his burden is thinking of all those frozen and flickering lives out there, depending on what he and a few others do. The ring is out of his pocket and lodged in the hands of something no one truly understands. Was it right to bring Tom into this? He sees again the humble, merry face, the yellow boots. He remembers safety in that house of song. Had Gandalf and Elrond, in inviting Tom to council, dragged an old, harmless spirit into a doom he never meant to share? Or had Tom always been bound for this? In his valley, Goldberry feels the shift. The Withywindle run odd now. Sometimes the little river rushes with spring torrent for an hour, then stands in glassy stillness for what feels like days. Dragonflies frozen above its surface while the sun spins overhead in stops and starts. Goldberry stands by the bank, her green gown unruffled by any wind, though breezes hurry and halt around her. "Tom," she says once, into the hush. Water answers, carrying his song back to her in fragments, caught in eddies of time. She listens, her eyes, which have watched raindrops fall since before men named themselves sons of anyone, look suddenly very old. He has gone far this time, she murmurs to the reeds. Far beyond our house, she feels the decision he has made, to be not merely a watcher, but a stopper in a wound that might otherwise bleed the world away into Sauron's will. She knows that as long as Tom holds, the Dark Lord cannot fully close his hand on the world, but she also knows that Tom cannot let go. He is caught now, like a leaf jammed in a dam of his own building. Her fingers brush the water surface. Time ripples oddly, her reflection flickering between maiden and crone and something else, something that never had a word in mortal tongues. "We will wait," she tells the stream. "We are good at waiting." But the world of walking folk, they are not. She looks west, where elves walk in glades that flicker between spring and autumn, and east, where men march through days that leapfrog each other, and she wonders what this broken time will make of them. The fellowship still forms. That choice, at least, remains. Gandalf is adamant. "The road is no less needful," he says in Elrond's private chamber, where the candles burn at half speed in deference to the Lord of Rivendell's will, though its shape be changed. Sauron is not yet omnipotent. His hand is checked. We must press whatever advantage fate has crookedly given us. Elrond stands by the high window, watching mist cling to the dark pines. Somewhere out there in the valley, a doe steps through 3 different mornings in 1 hour. He can feel it. The ring is no longer something that can simply be carried and cast away, he says. It is woven through Bombadil now, and time and Sauron's reach. Can a hobbit's footfalls still alter it? Gandalf leans on his staff. Perhaps not in the way once foreseen, but the path to Orodruin is not only a path of stones, it is a path of choices. There may yet be a way to end the ring's pattern, even if its gold cannot be thrown into the fire. Elrond's dark brows bow. "What are you thinking? That Sauron himself is now bound to this knot," Gandalf answers. "If Bombadil holds him from fully manifesting his will, then perhaps there is a way to pull Sauron down further into that same trap until he cannot reach even the cracks he now explores. And how, pray, do you intend to drag the necromancer deeper into this snare? Elrond's voice holds a touch of weary humor. With hobbit rope? Gandalf almost smiles. With the one thing he still must fear, that which is utterly beyond his comprehension. He looks toward the south and east, toward places where time bends strangely. We will walk into the broken currents. We will find where his reach is weakest, where his eye slips between fractured seconds. And there we will work. The fellowship is called 9 Once. More, yet they will journey not only across space, but through uneven time. On the eve of their departure, Frodo stands at the Bruinen. The river that had risen to drown the Black Riders is odd now. It flows smoothly for a stretch, then seems to pause, glassed over, before leaping forward in a half-delayed rush. Elrond stands beside him. In the days of your Shire, one might say you are young, Elrond tells him softly. But look, he gestures to a rock in midstream. That stone there may see 10 seasons pass while you take one step, or none. You must be ready to feel your own life run faster or slower than the land. Frodo nods, though he does not entirely understand. He is a hobbit. He thinks in second breakfasts and harvests, not centuries and sundered ages, but he understands burdens. If I age, he says quietly, or if I don't, while others do, does that matter if we win? Elrond's gaze is very gentle. It matters, he says, because you matter. But it may not be enough reason not to walk. Frodo looks down at his hands. They tremble slightly. He is frightened, not of orcs or Nazgul, but of the idea that he might step into a day that lasts a year, or a year that feels like an hour. While the Shire flickers and jumps without him, some parts of it perhaps already living through winters he will never see. He swallows. "I'll go," he says. "I still feel responsible, even if I've given up the ring itself. I brought Tom into this. I must see it through." Elrond inclines his head. Then go with blessings of all the ages. They depart. Their first days out of Rivendell are bewildering. There are stretches where their march is nearly normal, breath and step, and the swing of packs falling into a rhythm that soothes. The sky brightens and darkens in proper order. Then, without warning, they step across an unseen boundary, and time stutters. They camp once in a little hollow, near a stand of beeches. When they wake, the fire is still embers, but the trees have shed all leaves, which lie in crisp, dry heaps around them. The air is colder. Legolas looks up and sees that the moon is a thin crescent when it was full before sleep. Yet no one feels older. What in Middle-earth? Pippin breathes, spinning slowly. "My bread," Sam says in dismay, holding up a loaf that has gone stale and green-edged in one night. "Ruined," Gimli snorts. "Count your blessings, Master Hobbit. In the deeps of the earth, I have seen food rot between one heartbeat and the next when foul magic meddles. This is only the wild song of time gone wrong." Gandalf crouches, fingers sifting through the fallen leaves. "The world is trying to rebalance itself," he murmurs. "In patches, it spends days and seasons in one place to make up for their lack in another. We must learn these patterns." He draws rough marks in the earth, lines and loops, representing how some regions might be racing, others lagging. Aragorn crouches opposite him, studying. "If we misjudge," he says, "we may walk into a place where days slip by in our march, while only hours pass. Elsewhere, or the reverse, we might arrive in Lothlorien before we have left." He looks up, lips quirked, despite the grimness. In truth, we may never know. The journey becomes not only a test of endurance, but of perception. Gandalf learns to feel for the faint buzzing in his staff that warns of a temporal eddy, a place where seconds clump. Legolas senses when the stars seem slightly out of tune with the song he learned in his youth. Aragorn notes how his own heartbeat echoes back at him too quickly or too slowly. Frodo, strangely, adapts more easily than most. For him, time has been strange since he first touched the ring. Days dragged, nights flashed, all distorted by the weight in his pocket. Now, without it, he is more naked to the world's new irregularities, but he recognizes the sensation. It's like walking after you've been on a boat, he tells Sam one evening. Your feet don't trust the ground to be where you think it is. Sam grunts, adjusting the pots in his pack. If I start floating, Mr. Frodo, you grab my coattail, he says. I'm not letting some wayward second steal me off. The humor keeps them sane. Meanwhile, in realms they will not reach for a long while. Others struggle. In Lothlorien, time was always different. The Golden Wood was a place where the great age of the world lingered, where seasons passed, slow and soft, under the will of Galadriel and Celeborn. Now, the broken river of days strikes it like a strange tide. Galadriel stands on the green hill of Sharon Amroth, hair bright as captured starlight. Around her, the malorn leaves shimmer, some golden with deep autumn, some fresh and green with spring, on the same branch. She closes her eyes. The mirror shows her odd things now. When she fills the basin and peers, she does not only see might-be's and tomorrows, but also shards of yesterday that have been dislodged and float free. She sees Elendil standing at the last alliance, and a moment later, she sees Frodo on the slopes of some mountain that should be far in his future. She sees Tom Bombadil laughing beside a pond that exists in no map. She hears the faint hum of his song stretched thin from wherever he now stands. You have overreached, little singer, she murmurs, and yet you have checked the darkness at a price. Celeborn approaches, his steps barely stirring the green. Our borders hold, he says. The sundering of days troubles the Golden Wood less than other lands, perhaps because time was always slower here. Galadriel nods, but beyond our trees, men and dwarves and halflings stumble, she says. We cannot stand apart forever, wrapped in our own hours when theirs are cracked. She looks into the basin again. For a flicker, she sees Minas Tirith in two states at once, white and proud under the sun, and battered, clouded with smoke, some great siege half happening, half not. She sees Sauron's eye glower blind in the east, its lidless gaze unable to track moving prey in a world of stop-start motion, but she also feels his thought, a cold searchlight that probes not with seconds, but with the weight of attention. He is learning to reach between the fragments of time, to send whispers and promises through the gaps. The Nazgul cannot fly as once they did, but their spirits can slip between longer moments, haunting dreams and unused instants. We must move while he learns, she says softly, before his mastery of this new field outstrips ours. Her thought brushes outward, a soft wind across broken hours. She feels the fellowship, a little knot of resolve on the road. She feels Aragorn's stubborn patience, Frodo's quiet courage, Sam's unshakable devotion. She feels also something troubling. In the Shire, where time is mostly gentle, a darkness creeping. The slow coiling of a minor evil emboldened by the major's distraction. Saruman's long, pale hand moves quicker where Sauron's cannot. In Isengard, the White Wizard has not been idle. He sits in Orthanc, a place of black stone that endures any storm, and he smiles thinly at how the world outside his tower warps and jerks. Fools, he sighs. They sought to lock Sauron's hand and instead shattered the very glass that holds the hour. His palantir shows him not only space but fractured time. He learns faster than most how to slide his thought between stretched instants. Where Sauron gropes outward from a stuck center, Saruman nimble walks along the cracks. He whispers into the dreams of men who blink 5 times in one heartbeat. He plants suggestions in the pauses between sentences. He feeds doubts into Denethor's mind in the stilled seconds when the steward's candle does not burn. If the great clock stops, he murmurs to himself, then only those who can wind their own will move freely. He sees opportunity. Sauron's armies are stalled. Gondor's foresight stumbles. Rohan's riders find their fates in disarray. Saruman begins to envision a world not of Sauron's dominion, nor of the old fading west, but of his own rule, a patchwork of personal hours, each bound to his will, an Isengard that exists always in the best day of its strength, while his enemies rot in looped nights and drawn-out defeats. He starts his own experiments. Deep in the pits of Isengard, where machinery grinds even when the sun outside stands still, Saruman plays with time in smaller ways. He creates chambers where a seed grows to a sapling in moments, roots wrapping around gears only to be burned and the process repeated. He tests whether orcs age quicker in speeded hours, whether their loyalty decays or solidifies when memory and hunger outstrip the march of days. He is not the only one. Back on the road, the Fellowship reaches the Misty Mountains. Here, time has always been treacherous, full of echoes and avalanches, the slow work of frost and thaw. Now, it becomes a maze not only of stone, but of misaligned minutes. They enter Caradhras Pass in what seems good weather. Snow lies on the shoulders of the peaks, but the wind is tolerable. They tread carefully, eyes on the sky. Halfway up a narrow slope, the air thickens. Aragorn feels it first, a drag on his stride out of measure with the incline, his breath condensing in front of him too slowly, hanging in the air long enough for him to walk through his own exhale. "Back!" he calls. There is a slow place ahead. Even as he speaks, the snow beneath his boots crunches oddly, the sound stretching. Legolas, light-footed, has already stepped into the affected zone. From his perspective, nothing is wrong for the first few steps. Then he realizes no one is replying. He turns. His companions are statues on the slope, caught mid-step. Their cloaks hang in the air like stiff cloth. Even Gandalf's staff is paused mid-tap. Legolas' heart rate spikes. He looks up. Above, a cloud is in the middle of forming, its tendrils of vapor half spun. He tests with a thrown stone. It arcs far slower than his hand moved, crawling through the air, giving him time to watch every rotation. When it hits a snowbank, the explosion of powder expands glacially. "Ah," he murmurs, "we have entered a deep slough. For an elf, this is bothersome, but not deadly." He has sat through long nights that might as well have been like this. For mortals, this could be a trap that eats months of their life, while the world outside only ticks a few heartbeats. He strides back, pushing through a thickening of seconds like cobwebs. Re-entering the normal flow is like plunging into cold water. Gimli is still finishing a grumble. Sam is still mid-blink. "Don't go that way," Legolas says in one breath. Gandalf turns sharply, cloak snapping. "What did you see? Time is a bog." Legolas' fair brow creases. "I walked 10 paces and felt months might pass before I return. For me, while you stand here, We cannot risk you all aging to winter on that ridge. Gandalf nods grimly. Then Caradhras has more weapons than snow. We must spare our strength. Moria may yet be our road. So the mountain, whose malice had been beaten in one timeline by stubborn resolve alone, now cooperates with the new brokenness of the world to force them below. As they debate, somewhere deep beneath, in the halls of Khazad-dûm, the Balrog stirs in its sleep between moments. It dreams of ancient fires and the drums of the First Age. Sometimes centuries pass for it in the span of a dwarf's heartbeat. Sometimes entire days in the sun roll by while it blinks. This makes it no less deadly. In Imladris, Elrond watches them go with a heart divided. He sends messengers along other strands of time, slipping letters into moments where they may find allies still synchronized enough to answer. Some arrive too early, some too late. A few land just right. In Rohan, Eomer finds one such message slipped beneath his door. He reads it by lamplight that flutters in a normal rhythm. The world is cracked, it says in Elrond's precise script. Beware Isengard, where white lies move faster than the sun. In Gondor, Denethor receives a different letter that has warped in its journey. The ink runs in places where time's eddy got it wet. Words smeared into suggestions. He reads, Beware guard and white, faster, son, and concludes by his own bitterness that this warns him not of Saruman's treachery, but of some imagined future king from the north. He grows more suspicious of any mention of Isildur's heir. The cracks in time become cracks between hearts. Back under the mountain, the Fellowship enters Moria. The darkness there is more than the absence of light. It is the presence of forgotten time. In some halls, they find the skeletons of dwarves that have lain undisturbed for centuries, dust thick upon them, and beside them, a half-eaten meal, bread still soft, meat not yet rotten. In other tunnels, they see fresh pick marks on stone, as if the miners just left. But the tools are rusty with age, bits of the past and present jumbled together, Gandalf mutters. We must tread carefully. We may disturb ghosts that have not yet died. Pippin, ever unfortunate, proves this literally at the well where once he only dropped a stone. Now, when he leans over, he sees his own reflection flicker between child and old man and something else. Don't, Gandalf says sharply. This place is particularly thin, but curiosity and clumsiness combine. Pippin's sleeve catches on a loose stone. It dislodges, falling into the black. The sound of its impact does not come up in one echo, but in several, overlapping, some loud and near, some faint and far, as if it has hit different ages at once. Then, from below, 3 answering drums. One is distant, as if in some remembered first age when dwarves only just woke the deep things. One is near, the beat that once answered Balin's last stand. One is now. Gandalf's face tightens. You have not only alerted what is, he says, but what was and what might be. Run. The chase through Moria becomes not only spatial, but temporal. They race along bridges while orc warriors flicker in and out of existence on adjacent paths, some from days when they still wore crude iron, some from a dark near future when they carry strange, unnervingly elegant blades, forged perhaps in some Sarumannic forge where time runs faster. The Fellowship dodges not only arrows, but half-real spears from almost battles. On the bridge of Khazad-dûm, the confrontation comes. The Balrog emerges not just from down the hall, but from out of time. The air around it shimmers with heat that seems to come from several days at once, layered. Its mane of fire burns in slow motion and sudden flare. Gandalf steps forward. His voice, when he speaks, must find a way to carry across broken seconds. Go back to the shadow, he intones. You cannot pass. The Balrog answers in a roar that is also the sound of collapsing pillars, heard from 3 distances. Gandalf knows something new. He could fight this thing as once he did. Stand, break the bridge, fall, struggle upon the endless stair in some timeless combat, return changed. But now, time itself is a weapon. If he can drag the Balrog into a deep slow, trap it in a pocket of nearly still centuries, it will be as good as slain for any who live in the normal flow. He raises his staff. Light bursts from it, not in a single flash, but in a series of pulses like a heartbeat trying to re-establish a rhythm. He sings, not a spell of fire quenching or control, but a call to the broken river. Around the Balrog, seconds thicken, its stride slows. Each step becomes a laborious heaving. Its whip cracks through air that resists. "Go!" Gandalf shouts to the Fellowship. They run. Frodo looks back just long enough to see the wizard and the demon locked in a strange ballet, their motions jerky, staggered. For every one of Gandalf's breaths, the Balrog draws only half finally, a snarl. The bridge cracks under the strain of weight and arrested momentum. When it breaks, the fall is not clean. They drop through layers of slowed and quickened time, sometimes plummeting free, sometimes hanging midair for heartbeats that feel like hours. The Balrog's roar becomes a long, low note. Gandalf has one last thought to send through the threads. "Fly, you fools!" comes to them stretched and echoing, a chorus of admonitions that will ring in Frodo's skull for what may be days or years. The distinction is blurred. He falls into a deep slow with the Balrog, vanishing from any usable timeline. The Fellowship staggers out into the dim-rilled dale without their guide. Time outside, for once, seems almost sane. The sky arcs from blue to dusk in proper order. The grass grows at a normal pace. They collapse. The grief is as sharp as ever, but colored by another dread. In this world, when someone falls out of sight, one does not know if they are dead or living 1,000 days in a bubble or caught forever in the last second of their life. "Is he gone?" Pippin asks, voice small. Aragorn's jaw works. "I do not know," he admits. "We must act as if he is." He looks at Frodo. "The burden is heavier than we thought," he says. "You carry not only the hopes of those still moving, but of those trapped." Frodo nods mechanically. Something in him hardens. They go on. Lothlorien provides a strange respite. Here, Galadriel's will smooth some of the fractures. Within the ring of her power, time is more regular, though every now and then a distant bird seems to hang too long on a wing beat, or a song repeats with a subtle alteration. For a time, the Fellowship can catch breath, mend gear, speak without worrying that their words will be stolen by a skip in the seconds. Galadriel calls Frodo to her mirror early. She wants to see how the broken time has altered his possible futures. He looks into the basin. The images are more chaotic than in the true tale. He sees the Shire, but flickering between 3 states. The peaceful present, a darkened industrial future of smoking chimneys and fallen party trees, and a Shire strangely bright, where children play under expanded skies, and there is a faint echo of elven song. He sees Gondor, sometimes triumphant under a king's banner, sometimes crushed beneath a great shadow that never marches, only permeates, seeping into days from the timeless tower of Sauron. He sees Tom Bombadil. Tom stands in a nowhere place, one foot on a star, the other on the lip of some vast unseen bowl. The ring glows around his finger, half melted into his skin. His face is strained in a way Frodo has never seen. He is not used to effort, Galadriel says softly. Old Tom's power is deep, but usually unbent. Now he exerts himself ceaselessly, holding the knot. Frodo feels a pang. "This is my fault," he blurts. If we hadn't asked him." Galadriel's gaze is stern. "Do not claim more fault than is yours," she says. The choice to walk beyond his borders was Tom's. The choice to make the ring was Sauron's. The choice to waste the counsels of the wise, to cling to power, belongs to many. Yours is heavy enough without borrowing theirs. She studies him. "You feel lighter without the ring," she observes, "and yet more stretched." Frodo nods. "I feel like I'm listening all the time," he says slowly, "for something that isn't there anymore, the way you miss a sound you've grown used to. But sometimes if I stand very still, I think I can almost hear Tom humming. Far away." Galadriel's eyes flicker. "Then remember that hum," she says. "There may come a moment when you must choose whether to trust it. In this timeline, the great choice on the slopes of Mount Doom may not be Frodo's alone." The Fellowship leaves Lothlorien with more than boats and cloaks. Galadriel has taught them to feel the seams of time better, to recognize where they might slip into a quicker current when they need haste, or a slower pool to hide from the eyes searching. She has also sent messages of her own through the cracks, reaching allies that Elrond could not. One touches Thranduil in Mirkwood, warning him that spiders from some future dark are slipping into his forest through rent nights. Another brushes Radagast, who has been wandering in pockets of uneven dawn, talking to bewildered birds who cannot find their migrations. The Wizard of Falling Leaves finally rouses. If the beasts of Middle-earth are disordered, the land itself will not bear it. Radagast begins to weave his own soft spells, calming stuttering seasons where he can, smoothing the births of fawns who would otherwise be caught in loops of labor. His small efforts may matter yet. Downriver on the Anduin, as the Fellowship approaches the Argonath, time plays a more direct role. They reach the point where, in the canonical tale, Boromir's temptation and fall soon loom. Here, the fractures in time will twist the knife. Boromir has been troubled since Lorien. He has seen in Galadriel's mirror a Minas Tirith that withstands every assault because days loop endlessly around its walls, never quite falling to a final doom. In some loops, he dies in the first charge. In others, he stands last on the 7th level. He saw also a version of himself, older, harder, with a strange light in his eyes, ruling a city where clocks do not match the sun. The images gnaw at him. Now, as they camp on the western shore with Rauros thunder in their ears, Boromir sits, apart, fingers digging into the earth. Time around him is oddly taut. He does not know that he is sitting on the edge of a quick eddy. His thoughts move faster here, more hours' worth of rumination in one night than any other man would have. He stews. Frodo feels the pressure. He feels also something new. Sauron's thought, not in the clamoring way it once pushed through the ring, but in whispered suggestions that slide along the cracks of the new temporal world. "You are free of me," the implication breathes, "but not of responsibility. Why leave your fate in the hands of men who cannot keep their own time straight?" Tom Bombadil plays with clocks. Sauron will learn to master them. Only decisive action now can matter. Frodo shakes his head, trying to dislodge the voice. Across the camp, Boromir rises. The scene plays out with grim familiarity. The walk, the offer of help, the attempted persuasion, the growing edge in the man of Gondor's tone. "Do you not see?" Boromir cries, hands clenching. In a world where days themselves are untrustworthy, men need one firm anchor. The ring could be that anchor. Gondor could be that anchor. My father, my city. Frodo backs away. The argument escalates, as in the story they all know. But here, at the moment Boromir reaches, fingers clawing not for Frodo, but for that vanished gold, time slips. They fall into a loop. Frodo hears the same argument again, sees the same desperate eyes, feels the same branch under his hand, and again, and again. Each time, Boromir's words shift slightly. In one loop he begs, in another he commands, in another he weeps. Frodo realizes with sick horror that they are caught in a small eddy of minutes, doomed to repeat this confrontation with tiny variations until some new factor breaks in. Is this Sauron's doing, savoring torment, or Tom's carelessness, or simply chance in a broken world? It does not matter. He must get out. On the third repetition, when Boromir reaches, Frodo does something unexpected. He calls, not to Elbereth, not to any named power of the West, but to Tom Bombadil. "Tom!" he gasps, voice raw. "If you can hear from wherever you are, help! Pull this minute aside." For an instant, nothing. Boromir's hand closes on his cloak, then a chuckle. It threads through the trees like a breeze. Boromir freezes, fingers inches from Frodo's throat. The air around them shimmers, becoming more fluid. "Ah, little master," Tom's distant voice says, "you've found a strange eddy." Hold on. Frodo feels a tug, familiar now, the same kind of yank that once wrenched time at the council. This time it is gentler, like being pulled out of a fast stream into a calmer pool. The loop breaks. Boromir blinks, hand now empty and hanging at his side. He looks at Frodo, and some of the fever leaves his eyes. "What did I say?" he whispers. "Forgive me." Frodo, shaken, backs away, still knowing he cannot stay with this man, however repentant. Tom's help has saved him from a recursion of trauma, but it has also affirmed something. Tom is entangled deeply enough to hear such calls, to influence even small bubbles of repeating seconds. Tom is now the secret player behind many moments. Frodo flees, putting on the ring not to vanish into Sauron's gaze, as he once might have, but to step sideways into a thinner layer of time, one the eye cannot yet survey well. He slips. The rest of the tragedy unfolds, altered. When the orcs come, when Uruk-hai of Saruman crash through the undergrowth, time fractures mid-battle. Arrows hang mid-flight for some, while swords swing thrice as fast for others. Boromir, fighting for Merry and Pippin, finds that in his patch of forest, seconds have stretched. He can interpose his shield countless times, feels each arrow's impact like a separate little eternity. He takes more than 3. He loses count between one arrow and the next. He has time to think of his father, of his brother, of the city he loves frozen in some unknown tomorrow. He dies, if he dies, in a world where the concept of moment has bloated. Yet his sacrifice still buys the hobbit's capture and Aragorn's last words. The fellowship breaks. Their paths diverge not only in space, but also in temporal experience. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli will chase the Uruk-hai through plains where sometimes the sun rises twice in one composition of breath. Merry and Pippin will be carried into Fangorn through zones of slow growth, where the trees have taken centuries to think whether to move one branch. Frodo and Sam will skirt the edge of the dead marshes, where the faces beneath the water sometimes are the newly fallen and sometimes ancient warriors, blinking in and out, occasionally mouthing warnings when a ripple of now intersects with a then. Sooner or later, all these warped journeys will circle back to one fixed point. Mordor, where Sauron nurses his rage and refines new tools. Because although his army still cannot march in the regular way, his influence has found new paths. He has learned to corrupt time itself in certain places, making days of despair loop around the same towns, trapping them in unending siege visions that break spirit without firing a shot. In a village on Gondor's eastern border, a farmer wakes every dawn to the sound of orc horns that never quite arrive, lives through a day of preparation and dread, then wakes to the same morning again, until on the 20th repetition, he no longer bothers sharpening his scythe into a spear. In the court of the steward, Denethor relives the vision of his city burning so often in such repeats that he begins to act as though its fall is already accomplished. Time, in Sauron's hands, becomes a psychological weapon. In contrast, in pockets where Tom's influence is strong, the old forest, bits of the Shire, corners of Bree, there are moments of peace given back. Days that repeat not in horror, but in quiet contentment, giving rest to souls that would otherwise be frayed. A hobbit in Hobbiton finds that every Tuesday for a while includes an extra sunset hour of golden light, in which tea tastes particularly good and songs at the Green Dragon end on satisfying chords. These are small mercies. They do, however, keep hope alive in places Sauron's thought cannot fully penetrate. As years, or what people can still call years, unfold in this wounded chronology, patterns emerge. Children are born in quick places, aging faster than their parents who live across a time-slow stream. Emperors in distant lands try to hoard pockets of accelerated time for their own growth and power. But our focus returns always to the core threads: the hobbits, the would-be king, the Dark Lord, and the enigmatic Bombadil, caught in between. Frodo and Sam's road to Mordor is, if anything, even more harrowing here. They meet Gollum still, for some things are stubborn. Gollum has been slipping through strange times on his own, his long years under the mountains making him oddly resilient to such shifts. He knows paths both spatial and temporal, a cave here that leads not only to another valley, but to another hour. He becomes not only their guide through land, but their unwilling tutor in dangerous shortcuts through the broken clocks of Middle-earth. "Mustn't step there, precious," he hisses once, dragging Sam back from what looks like a harmless patch of grass. Nasty, nasty, fast times. You grows old in a blink, not for fat hobbits. Sam yanks his arm free. "Who are you calling fat?" he mutters. Then, more seriously, "How do you know?" Gollum points. Finger trembling, they see, not far away, the weathered remains of some poor animal half embedded in the ground, its flesh mummified, fur gone, bones worn, while the grass around it is fresh and green. Rabbit. Gollum's voice is low. It hopped. It did. Wrong place. Wrong when. We watched it turn to bones while we swallowed. Sam blanches. "Right then," he mutters. "Well, stick close, Mr. Frodo." Frodo watches Gollum with new eyes. Here is a creature who has lived out of sync with the world for centuries, whose entire existence has been a slow distortion of time. Is Gollum, in some twisted way, a foreshadowing of what Tom risks becoming, entangled with the ring's pattern? Sometimes, in the odd half-sleep they manage, Frodo dreams of Tom's face taking on Gollum's hunger, not for fish, but for stillness, for a world that never changes, where he need never exert himself again. He wakes in a sweat, clutching at the thought of yellow boots and autumn songs as if to anchor Bombadil in his mind as he was. Overhead, the stars have taken to moving in peculiar ways. Some nights, constellations skip forward a season. Other nights they drift lazily. The valor in their distant west feel the tug. Mandos, keeper of the dooms of the dead, sees souls arrive in fits and starts rather than in steady procession. Some linger in long twilight between life and his halls. That is when he knows the world of the living is truly broken. Manwë feels the winds stumble. The Valar confer among themselves, but as in the true tale, their direct intervention is bound by ancient choice. They cannot simply mend time without unmaking free will. They must work, if at all, through whispers and dreams. Ulmo, lover of waters, speaks to Bombadil most clearly, far below the everyday flow of existence. Where Tom still perches at the root of the ring's distortion, he hears the sea's deep voice. You strain, Ulmo rumbles. You hold back a flood with your hands. You did not make this dam. Why do you stand there? Tom puffs out his cheeks. Because no one else was standing, he says. Because the little folk who came to my door asked me to counsel, and I went. Because I am old enough to know that if I walk always apart, the song will pass me by and leave me humming alone. Ulmo sounds almost amused. You always walked apart, he says. We named you eldest and let you be. Tom's laugh is weary. Perhaps eldest must grow up sometime. The choice he faces now is this: maintain the rupture, keeping Sauron from full embodiment, but condemning the world to permanent temporal injury, or find a way to release the knot in such a pattern that Sauron tumbles, unable to catch himself, into some deep slough from which he cannot return. To do that, Tom must time his letting go with mortal action. He must coordinate from his strange vantage with hobbit feet on volcanic rock. He must, in other words, care very much about the timings of others' lives. This is new to him. He begins to watch. He watches Frodo and Sam creep toward Mordor, ducking between rushing hours like fish among reeds. He watches Aragorn muster the captains of the West. Not before the Black Gate now, for that road is madness with temporal storms, but at a different point where Sauron's gaze is distracted by his own experiments. He watches Éowyn stand at a window in Meduseld, watching days flicker over the plains and feeling her own youth pulled in different directions. He smiles sadly at her fierce heart. He watches children in Bree play the same game 3 times because time hiccups and counts that a blessing. He watches Saruman spin his own little clocks. When the time comes, as much as anything can be called time now, it is messier than any council's plan. Frodo and Sam, guided by Gollum's perverse cunning and their own stubborn will, still come, battered and thin, to the edges of Gorgoroth. There, the brokenness of hours is most intense. Sauron has twisted the field around his tower into a labyrinth of repeating horrors and stalled agonies. Somewhere, a man dies under a lash, then stands, the welt on his back vanishing only to be struck again. Somewhere, an orc eats, chews, swallows, then bites into the same piece of meat once more. The ground itself seems to shift not only in space, but in when it was last trod. Frodo feels his strength run out, then return, then half fade, as if he is walking through versions of himself. By the time they reach the slopes of Mount Doom, the lines of their faces show not only physical labor, but a strange multiplicity. They have lived more hours than the sun around them could account for. At the crack of doom, the confrontation with Gollum still comes. The ring is not in Frodo's pocket, but its pattern burns in his mind. For the ring is not just physical, now it has become a schema of domination wrapped around Bombadil, Sauron, and the very skein of time. Standing on the brink, Frodo feels its pull, not to claim it, but to stop all this. End it, it whispers. Throw yourself, throw the knot into the fire, stop the brokenness, let time reweave cleanly. It will hurt, many threads will snap, but there will be an end. Tom's distant hum vibrates painfully in his skull. Sauron's will slams in, furious. He cannot see Frodo through broken seconds, but he feels danger. He reaches, not with eye, but with thought, pouring influence along the cracks. He floods the chamber in a wave of pressure. Frodo staggers. Sam, exhausted, clings to his cloak, eyes wide. "We're here, Mr. Frodo," he says hoarsely. "Don't listen. Just do what you came to do, whatever that is now. I'm with you." Gollum lurks in the shadows, eyes hungry. In this moment, Tom Bombadil acts. He has spent a long while, outside of measurable days, preparing for this. He has been subtly tugging at threads, aligning eddies, making sure that when Frodo stands here, when Sauron stretches, the knot will be under maximum strain. Now he pulls. From his nowhere place, he yanks on the conceptual ring, on Sauron's focus, on the tangle of time around Mount Doom. In the chamber, reality lurches. For an instant, all possible versions of this scene overlay. Frodo claiming the ring, Frodo failing, Frodo falling, Gollum slipping, Gollum saving, Sam carrying, Sam staying. Mount Doom erupting, Mount Doom quiet. Frodo hears distantly a familiar chuckle turned into a strained grunt. "Now, little master," Tom gasps, his voice like wind forced through a crack. "Step aside." Frodo does the bravest possible thing. He does nothing. He does not cast himself in, does not claim, does not fight Gollum for possession that could never be his physically. He loosens his mind's grip. He trusts. That trust is the fulcrum Tom needs. Sauron, in his tower, hurls everything forward, pushing all his remaining will into this contested moment. Tom yanks sideways. The knot breaks. Not in the past way where the ring simply melts and power collapses in a single earthquake. Here, the breaking is of a different kind. The physical ring, the actual golden band still melded into Bombadil's weird half-reality, flashes white-hot in an elsewhere place and disintegrates, its atoms scattered not only in space, but across 1,000 microseconds. The conceptual ring, the pattern Sauron wrote into the music, is torn loose from the main weft of time and dragged down into a pocket of deep slow that Tom has been shaping, a cul-de-sac of centuries where each second lasts a year, inaccessible from any normal path. Sauron's will, stretched taut, tumbles after it. In Barad-dûr, the tower does not explode in a single great cataclysm. It fades. The stone remains at first, but begins to move at a different speed than the rest of the world. To outside eyes, the black spire becomes a blur, its edges smearing like a picture that cannot quite keep up with the gaze. Within, Sauron's awareness is drawn out, lengthened, diluted. He is not unmade, but bound more cruelly, perhaps, than in any other ending. Trapped in a bubble of almost time where each attempt to reach outward takes longer and yields less. He cannot command armies from there. He can only watch at a rate so slow that by the time his thought forms, entire seasons will have passed. Outside, Mount Doom still reacts. The fire, relieved of the ring's presence and Sauron's oppressive will, convulses. The chamber shakes, but not as violently as in canon. Rocks fall, but in stuttering slow bursts, giving the hobbits unnervingly precise windows to dodge. Sam hauls Frodo out. Behind them, Gollum, who had lunged too late for a ring that was never quite in that chamber, tumbles into a different fate. He falls between 2 seconds, vanishing from any normal track. Whether he lands in some future or past, no one ever learns. Outside, the sky over Mordor clears in patches. The great lid of cloud that has hung frozen above for so long begins to unravel. Yet the clearing is not total. In some directions, weather still behaves erratically. The broken river of time does not magically reseal. Tom Bombadil, at the heart of the knot, lets go and finds that he cannot return fully to what he was. He has, in breaking the ring's pattern, also broken his own detachment. He falls, not into fire, into the flow of time proper. He lands, with an almost comical thump, on a hill near his own house. Goldberry is there. To Tom, it feels like he has been gone only slightly longer than an afternoon's wander. To Goldberry, it has been difficult to measure. She looks at him, eyes shining with relief and something else. Recognition that he is changed. "Tom," she says simply. Tom laughs, but there is iron in it. "Oh, my pretty Lily," he says, voice a little hoarse. Old Tom's arms are tired. The clocks all wanted to go their own ways. He looks around. The Withywindle flows more smoothly than before, though a few eddies still spin oddly. The sky above his valley moves with something like normal sun and moon. Beyond, he can sense that much of the world has returned to a more regular beat. Not all. Some fractures are now permanent, scars in the fabric of days. But Sauron's great hand is gone from the loom. Tom sits heavily on the grass. He feels something he has rarely felt. The weight of years. He is still eldest. He is still rooted deep. But now he is, in a way he had never been before, part of the story. He has chosen and acted, and the consequences flow past him in real time. He cannot step aside so easily. In Gondor, the news comes slowly, but it comes. The Dark Lord's shadow no longer gathers on the horizon. His messengers, strange flickers of dread in people's dreams, dwindle. The eye in the east becomes a smudge. The great siege that in another reality would have tested Minas Tirith to the utmost never fully manifests. Orcords that had been half assembled in the Efelduth simply stop moving. Their commanders stand in confusion as days suddenly sink, as their weapons rust at a normal rate. Some collapse as the time loops that had been sustaining their unnatural vigor collapse. Others scatter, leaderless. Denethor, sitting with his palantir, sees the blur where Barad-dûr once was sharp, and does not know what to make of it. The enemy is bound, he murmurs, but not defeated. How do I rule a realm under that? Aragorn will help answer that when he comes, not in war's desperate aftermath, but in strange, hesitant negotiations during a period of uneasy peace. For the immediate aftermath of Mount Doom's half-eruption is not a glorious coronation in the ruins of victory, but a long, confused sorting. The army of the West, marching toward a black gate that never quite descends into its most furious battle, finds itself confronting enemies who look around in bewilderment and start to lay down arms. What now? Éomer asks Aragorn, standing on a ridge overlooking a host that is dissolving more from lack of direction than from any sword. "We rebuild," Aragorn says quietly. "We mend days as well as walls." He looks east. "We keep watch on a tower that cannot easily act, but cannot easily be torn down. We teach our children that vigilance is needed not only against marching feet, but against creeping distortions in how they count their hours. In the Shire, there is no scouring Saruman, whose plans hinged on exploiting Sauron's distraction and the chaos of defeat, finds his own time games abruptly curtailed when the main knot breaks. His little experiments backfire. Certain quick chambers in Isengard explode outward, releasing years of accelerated decay into his machines. gears rust to powder in moments. Wooden supports that had been kept unnaturally fresh crumble. He flees as before, but the path to the Shire is not as open. Time in Eriador has normalized more than in other parts, thanks to Bombadil's local influence. By the time Saruman slinks that way, Frodo and company have already returned and told tales. Word of a pale old man twisting minutes for his advantage has preceded him. The hobbits, suspicious of any wizardry now, bar their doors. Saruman dies not at Grimace, hand on a gray Shire road, but in some nameless ditch outside Bree, his heart failing in an eddy where his body ages 20 years in an hour. It is a mean, unstoried end. Wormtongue never reaches the Shire. He dies of exhaustion, trying to cross a bog where each step steals a week from his bones. Not all evil gets a climactic downfall when time itself has been the battlefield. Some is simply worn out by its own schemes. For the ordinary folk of Middle-earth, life slowly regains a measure of stability. Children born after the breaking grow up with stories of the stuttering years, when some days came twice and some not at all. They see occasionally a place where time still behaves oddly, an old well where voices echo back from what was said yesterday, a tree that loses its leaves once every decade instead of every year. These become minor wonders, curiosities. They do not live under a constant threat of war. Aragorn is crowned, but later, and with a different kind of gravity. He must be not only a Warkin, but a time king, one who sets calendars that account for the scars, who coordinates with elf sages and dwarves' schools to make sure planting still matches the true spring. He consults often with Elrond and Galadriel, with Radagast, and even dwarven seers who have tracked the movement of stone cracks. He knows Sauron is not annihilated. The blur where Barad-dûr was remains visible from certain high places on very clear days, a faint smudge like heath haze on the eastern horizon. Most who see it think it a trick of air. Aragorn knows better. It is like a spider in amber, he tells Faramir once, on a quiet night, not dead, unable to spin. Yet, can amber melt? Faramir asks. Perhaps, Aragorn says, not in our time, but we must live as though not. In the Shire, Frodo finds less peace than one might hope. The outward scouring was never needed, but the inward scarring remains. He has no ring on his chain, but he has echoes in his mind, the sensation of time stretching and knotting, of Tom's exhausted humming, of Sauron's pressure. He sits often under the party tree, listening to how the wind moves through its leaves. Sometimes he thinks he can tell when a second is slightly longer or shorter than another. He writes. His red book has extra chapters now, not only on travels and battles, but on the stuttering years. His attempt to describe what it felt like when Tuesday came twice, when arguments repeated, when age did strange things to faces. Sam marries Rosie. They have children, as in the other tale. He is grounding. When Frodo stares too long eastward, Sam nudges him. "No tower on that horizon for you, Mr. Frodo," he says. "We did our bit. Old Tom's doing his. King Strider's doing his. Our job now is taters, stories, and maybe making sure no one plays silly games with clocks again." Frodo smiles, but his eyes are often far away. He feels a kinship with Bombadil now. Both have been relocated in the story. Both used to live on the margins of others' tales, and both were dragged to the center of a crisis that changed them. Eventually, as in the true story, Frodo is offered a chance to leave, but the ships of the West sail differently under this sky. Valinor is not untouched by the break. Its shores still glow with deathless light, but time there, too, has had to flex a little to accommodate the world's wound. When Frodo steps aboard the gray ship, he feels not just grief for leaving, but curiosity. Will his scars feel less in a land where days have always been gentle, or will the contrast make them ache more? He turns one last time to look at Middle-earth. In the distance, though he cannot see it, an old man in yellow boots sits by a river, whistling. Tom Bombadil watches the ship go. He feels the faint tug as Frodo's presence leaves the world's story. He hums a new song for him, one about resilience and broken clocks learned again to tick. Goldberry comes to his side. "Will you ever wander far again?" she asks. Tom considers. He has tasted involvement now. He has felt his actions ripple. He has also felt how heavy that is. "I might," he says slowly, "if they ask nicely." He grins, some of the old light back, but for now there are frogs to sing to. The world mends itself, slow and strange, but it mends. He dips his feet into the Withywindle. The water is cool, running steady. A leaf falls from an overhanging branch, lands, and floats away at a normal pace. Tom watches it until it rounds a bend. Far in the east, the blur that is Sauron's prison flickers. For one infinitesimal slice of a second, long in his deep slow, nothing in the world's flow, he almost feels something of the old power surge, but time holds. Tom's choice and Frodo's trust have bound the Dark Lord into a cage more subtle than any chain. Irrelevance measured in centuries, he can only watch trickle by. This is not the clean justice of fire. It is messy. There are still pockets of strange time that will trouble cartographers and philosophers for generations. Some people will be born into loops or eddies and will need guidance to live well therein. Yet there is space to live. Ordinary folk plant gardens, build houses, fall in love, argue, laugh, and die in mostly predictable spans. Great wars do not return during Aragorn's reign. Under his rule, Gondor keeps an order not only of law, but of days. New festivals mark the end of the stuttering years. On one such day, once a year, people across Middle-earth pause at noon for a single shared silent minute, remembering that time is a gift, not a guarantee. In Bree, an old man sometimes claims he saw a strange fellow in yellow boots during the worst of it, dancing through a rain that fell both up and down. No one believes him, but the tale is told. In Rivendell, what remains of it, as many elves sail and the house of Elrond grows quiet, lore masters argue for a long time whether involving Bombadil at all was wise. Some say, had he never touched the ring, time would not have broken, but perhaps Sauron would have triumphed. Others note that the peculiar, kinder future they now inhabit, a world without the Pelennors' heaps of dead, without Orodruin's total wrath, came only because the crisis took this strange sideways path. Elrond, when pressed, smiles faintly. "We cannot know the lines we did not walk," he says. "We only know that we are here and that the clocks mostly tick." He looks at a small pocket watch on his table, a Númenórean artifact. It had gone wild during the stuttering years, its hands whipping, stalling, even turning backward. Now it moves steadily. Tick, tick. Outside, the world turns. In the end, the haunting image is not of a collapsing tower or a king on a high throne, but of a humble figure on a riverbank. Tom Bombadil sits with his feet in the water, watching. The current carry a little boat, made of bark and leaf, launched by some Shire child upstream. He sings softly, not to hold back doom now, but for the joy of the moment, for a heartbeat, a normal, human heartbeat. No one in Middle-earth feels the weight of past or future at all. Then, somewhere, a clock chimes, and all who remember the years when time itself nearly stopped feel, without quite knowing why, a quiet shiver of gratitude that the next second comes.